The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for our December technical webinar series. Today's topic is going to be Unifier and P6, how integration of both systems can improve your organization. Today we're going to have Kevin Hicks, who's one of our senior Unifier implementation specialists, doing the presentation. But before we get started with the presentation, we got a couple of housekeeping items that we would like to go through. First and foremost, all call-in phones are automatically muted in order to preserve the quality of the audio for all of our attendees. If at any time you have questions during today's session, there is a questions box in your GoToMeeting that you can submit your questions, and time permitting, we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible. And lastly, there's going to be some follow-up to this webinar. For some people that may have registered that could not attend, we are going to provide a copy of the slides. We're going to do a recording of the webinar that you can distribute to other colleagues if you feel the need to. And all questions that are submitted either offline or online will be answered in the sheet as part of our follow-up. Kevin, can you go to the next slide or the next two slides?
Sure.
And the next one. All right, and because we are working within the Oracle product today, we have to provide the safe harbor statement. This is just that everything that we're going to show and talk about within this presentation is for your information and is based on items that we have perceived within the software. It may be a little bit different on the vendor side of the software as well, too. Next slide, please. This just shows some of the products and services that are offered by us here at DR McNatty in the project controls and system implementation, integration, dashboards, our managed services that we also do, and also us being a small business and disabled veteran business enterprise. Next slide, please. And our tool matrix, these are the tools that we are currently supporting through DR McNatty. There may be other tools that may come down the road that we may be part of as well too, but this just shows the support that we can provide to our clients for the different tool sets. At this point, we're going to turn the presentation over to our senior Unifier implementation consultant, Kevin Hicks, and he's going to go through the presentation. Kevin, it's yours.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Hicks. I'm a senior solution manager with DR McNatty, and one of the things I specialize in is in performing Unifier and P6 implementations. You all have received basically a webinar invitation and the abstract of what we're going to talk about today and go into, but just for a quick review, these are some things obviously you all can read, but we talk about some of the benefits of bringing P6 and Unifier together, some of the things that you can do in terms of capturing your dates, being able to relate activities to CBS or WBS codes in Unifier system, having the cash flow and your cost sheet driven by a P6 schedule, which I know is pretty important to people, and you're updating your reporting data and making informed qualitative and quantitative decisions. So this is basically the methodology or focus of what we're going to be talking about, with a few caveats that I'm going to talk about towards the end, and how this can benefit your organization moving forward. So in the next slide is basically just a little bit of structure, giving you some topic of the agendas that we'll be covering today. In terms of an overview, I'm going to talk about some construction projects and how they EPC, EPCM, capital improvements, how they work with P6 and Unifier, what's happening in the industry. I'll be going into the topical areas of Unifier and P6, looking at the schedule sheet, performing a small demo, looking at the activity sheet. Then I will move also to another area which deals with Gateway, Unifier, and P6, doing another small demo, looking at the P6 summary sheet, the cost sheet, a basic cash flow curve that I've generated, and we'll have some follow-ups. Actually, an interesting assignment for the attendees and also do some question and comments as well. So without further ado, I'd like to start quickly with, just for any of you newcomers, but most of you I'm assuming are probably pretty well versed in terms of the Unifier and P6 space. But for those of you, just a quick memory jog, Unifier is basically a integrated construction management system. You're looking at a standardized approach to construction and project management. You use it throughout the construction project lifecycle. And depending on how large your project is, you can basically use it to interact with all of your team members to collaborate, communicate, and execute a type of construction management or EPC project that you have. It's a web-based tool, which is one of its advantages, and you can use it basically from anywhere in the world where you have an internet connection. So another area that I'd like to talk about briefly here is dealing with what is happening in the industry, what things are happening in terms of construction projects, your EPC, EPCM, and capital improvement programs with P6 and Primavera Unifier. How is this fitting into the landscape and scope? So in our work at DR McNatty, and as we've grown in our experience and our breadth and depth of our implementations, we've looked at several things that's happening. Primavera P6 and Unifier they're consistently and continually evolving into an industry benchmark to be used with EPC and EPCM products. Companies, programs that use these things across the construction industry. So you're talking about you using schedulers use P6 to plan, schedule, and control their programs. They also use it with the ability to balance their resources. You can have your actual project performance versus your planned project performance. And because P6 can integrate with accounting and management systems, Oracle EBS, it's built-in integration with Unifier. This is part of one of the things that drives such a strong advantage of using these two systems. You're talking about easy forecasting and connecting your activities or tasks to a WBS or enterprise structure. That enterprise structure could also be your CBS codes or your cost accounting structure, which may be linked to your EBS system. This is also very important. You're looking at a contractor and subcontractor collaboration in terms of uploading schedules into your master schedule from contractors, which then is moved from P6 to Unifier. So this is a very important process. And joining this with the Unifier structure and its cost controls, you're looking for an enterprise is able to align its schedule, budgets, and expenditures. And this is very important in terms of reporting and moving forward. One of the key points that I will point out, the industry trend is more than 95% of your top engineering and companies in the United States are using P6 software for business, and all military and federal agencies use Primavera P6 as well. So it's basically the benchmark and just a huge trend that's happening now. So in saying that, laying out all those different benefits and reasons and connections for why P6 and Primavera Unifier are used in all of these construction, EPC, EPCM areas, I'm going to start to go into some of the practical applications of this now. So to follow into my first topical area, I'm going to go into Unifier and P6 in the schedule sheet. This graphic that I've created is basically just a high-level overview of some of the conceptual process of what happens between Unifier and P6. You have the capability between the two systems to pass data from P6 to Unifier and Unifier back to P6. This list of some basic things you can move from P6 into Unifier, you guys can obviously read. But two important things I would note on here would be your activities, your dates, your tasks, some of your costs, And through that, you would get a rough level schedule, probably with milestones of sort. After you've moved those particular activities and what it will cost, forecasted cost perhaps in P6 in the Unifier, you then can perform your project management processes and updates and pass the actual costs and actual dates, the real-time application is what is happening in your project back to P6. And this is just basically a diagram illustrating the process of this data passing back and forth. So next, what are we going to look at? So now I've gone to a screenshot, which is more in a sense where you would actually go, where does this actually happen? I am looking right now in P6, and I'm looking at the practical application of choosing to exchange data and move it from P6 over to the schedule sheet in Unifier and all of this data will actually be passed over, but I just highlighted a particular activity code, which has already been linked to the CBS or WBS structure, which I'm going to get into with the start and finish dates, as you can see. You also have the capability, once you've sent that data, to then, of course, see the data, see your schedule sheet in Unifier, and see your updated information, which is then allowing you to make decisions. You can have alerts, notifications, such as if you were a particular huge company and you are getting a numerous amount of schedules in from contractors. Should these schedules, any of them come in and hit a drop dead date that has a threshold within Unifier, you can have an alert or a possible BP process could be kicked off. If anything, an activity comes in after this date, I would like you to auto create a change order or a risk and have that sent to me. You would be able to do that using this type of feature and also see that in your schedule sheet. And again, I am showing you the P6 and Unifier CBS or WBS, which I'm going to show you a practical example of how that works in terms of how you're able to bring this cost breakdown structure or WBS structure. And by cost breakdown structure, I would assume and say this has some sort of linkage to your perhaps cost accounting system, which may be EBS, which you could then link to an activity in P6 and have that information pass back and forth from Unifier back to P6 and also from Unifier to EBS to get an accurate costing and accounting of what an activity is costing you and what activity it's linked to in the WBS or your schedule. And this is actually the activities of a particular project in P6, what we're looking at here. So in saying that, the screens that I've shown you, I'm going to exit from my slides now and actually go over to P6 and start with my demo. So if you would please train your eyes to, I'm going to go to a particular activity here in my P6 schedule, and I am looking at activity 08020, transfer to user agency. This particular activity has a CBS code that has been assigned. And I'll click on this particular CBS code, 0101300D1.1.1.1, and I'm calling it basically an administration requirement. How and where, question you may ask, does this CBS code come from? So what I have done previously, I imported a CBS code structure from an external system, which could be something that comes from EBS, which can be built in a particular template. And you would bring this structure in, I'm showing you a CSV file of that, into a template. You would then bring this WBS details import, line number 9, and you pull that into your cost sheet in Unifier. There is a feature within the system that allows you to then pull this cost code or accounting code structure, or WBS, into P6 and link that now to your activity, which I have done. We also have a particular start date and finish date here in P6. These dates have been pulled into our Unifier schedule sheet. And what I'm going to do is simply change these dates, July 17. I will move them to, I'll move it to the 20th. And I'm going to say not November 17th, November 30th. Okay. Simply save the information. And now that I have saved this information, it's linked to CBS, I've changed my start and finish dates. I'm going to go to a place called Actions, Exchange Data, and choose to send to the schedule sheet in Unifier. After I have initiated this basic data transfer, if I want to see what's actually happening with the transfer, you can click here, simply view your service status, send to schedule sheet, it's completed. This happens fairly quickly. And now I'm going to go over to Unifier, and look in my schedule sheet. Now I will mention there's a couple caveats to this. There's mapping and some configuration that has to take place behind the scenes. But this is your basic built-in out-of-the-box integration between your schedule sheet in P6 and the schedule sheet in Unifier. You are able to view your data through out-of-the-box integration mapping that you can set up to have these dates pushed. So I have now gone to Primavera Unifier, and I am looking at my schedule sheet. And if I go to activity 08020, I see my changed or updated date that I have. Actually, let me close this and refresh. Here we go. My updated actual start and actual finish dates that have been pushed from P6 over to Unifier within my schedule sheet. 07/20, 11/30. July 7/20, November 30th. Here in P6, and now here being shown in Unifier. So I mentioned the possibility if this were to come over, you're able to have an update or notification sent to you. Why is this useful in a sense, in a nutshell? You're using your project management system in conjunction with your schedule control system, P6, to drive your schedule in real time. You're using the systems dynamically. They're talking to one another. Like I mentioned, you may be able to have contractors senior information. You're getting real-time visibility into an activity, what is happening with an activity, what its schedule is. You're starting to get a more accurate reading into the financial health and schedule health of your particular project. Now, having said that, I want to go into another area, which is very important to show, which I think will be beneficial to those of you looking. Now that I have brought these, I've done some things on the back end and having brought this schedule or this schedule information over to from P6 to Unifier, I can choose to basically apply my project management methodology and things to those particular activities. So now I am going to go to the activity sheet to show you actually the practical application of this. So in Unifier, I have previously pushed my activities and my activities cost from P6 over to Unifier. And one particular activity that I'm going to focus on in terms of doing some updates and changes deals with, I'm going to look at this particular activity, 06040 bid evaluation, and show you some practical example of passing the data back and forth. So if I go back to my P6 and I go to activity 06040 bid evaluation, you can see that it's been linked to the CBS code. You see the start and finish dates, and you actually see an actual cost, some cost that I have assigned to this particular activity. And this activity has been brought in from P6 over to Unifier. Now, the feature in which this happens, you are dealing with Gateway in terms of your activity sheet in your P6 summary sheet integration that I'm going to talk about coming up. If you here and you actually move to where it says exchange data and you choose send to Primavera Unifier, you have the ability to choose to update your activity sheet data, which I have done previously. I'll simply choose to do it again. And this integration that needs to be configured between Gateway, P6, and Unifier allows you to update your activity data sheet from P6, pass it through Gateway, and bring it into the activity sheet in Unifier, which I'm going to now connect all the dots together to explain why this is important and beneficial. I will simply quickly check my service status, and it is running, and in a few minutes, it will complete. Any values, CBS values and dates, are updated and brought over from P6 into my Unifier schedule sheet, which is why you are seeing the reflection of that data in the schedule sheet, the activity sheet here in Unifier, the dates and some of the dollar values. Let me go back and check and see if this is actually completed. It's still running. It takes maybe 2 to 3 minutes to synchronize all of the activities. Depends on how many you may have. If you have a schedule with a lot of activities, it may take a bit longer. Refresh. just give this a moment. Still running. Let's see. Still running. Still running.
Hey, Kevin, while that's running, why don't we jump into the slides that starts talking about Gateway until that completes?
Okay. Yeah, I'll go over to those. So real quick, while that process is running, I'll show a practical application of what I was talking about. In this diagram, we're looking at the conceptual integration between Unifier, P6. You can also have Oracle EBS, should you choose, to pass data and information through Gateway. And we're talking about that in a sense of the activity sheet and P6 summary sheet that can be held in Unifier. You may be moving your Oracle costs. I talked about those cost codes of CBS that you could bring in to the Unifier schedule sheet. And actually not Unifier schedule sheet, the cost sheet, excuse me. And then attach those and have those linked to your activities in P6, moving them out of Unifier and back into P6 to be able to link to your activities, integrate, and then bring back through Gateway back into Unifier. So now you are basically integrating your P6 WBS, your Unifier or Oracle cost code or CBS. It's coming from your cost accounting structure if you're using that for your organization. And you can use this to push back to your EBS financials should you choose. And you're looking now at a real-time financials data and you're having visibility, for example, into how much maybe a material associated with an activity may be costing. You're getting your real-time cash flow curves and data through the integration of these three systems through Gateway. Let me clear out of the slides and quickly go back to P6. The service status should have completed. Synchronization service is done. And now, if I go to Primavera Unifier, I look at Lonsdale Place in my activity sheet. The particular activity 06040 is there with the value of 500 and the actual finish and actual start dates. Now, how can I affect this? Answer the next question. In P6 and update my dates in Unifier and pass it back to P6 to update my schedule. So I talked about the linkage of the systems through the CBS code and through the integration. I'm going to simply go to a financial transaction where I may be doing a purchase order. And I have purchase order records that I've done. I'm actually going to go to a draft that I created. I'm calling it just a basic title, a PO number. Maybe this is an EBS PO number, hypothetically, that could have been pushed over from EBS through Gateway and land in this PO number box, which can denote some sort of integration, a unique PO number to map back to the EBS system through Gateway. The reason why you're seeing the original PO amount, 500, I've chosen a vendor. And in my P6 activity, since that was inside of the activity sheet, in Unifier 06040. I can select this activity. It brings in the P6 planned cost, which is in the activity sheet in Unifier, which came from P6. And my line item, again, my cost code, remember, or my CBS code was 0101300D.1.1. It's an administration requirement. I'm just going to call it a service. There's no work package that I'm doing with it. One quantity, unit of measure, I'll call each. The cost, 500. The P6 activity details. I'll choose the P6 activity details again, 06040. That automatically brings in the P6 plan start, the P6 plan finish from the activity sheet in Unifier and the P6 plan cost. And now I am deciding that I want to update or change the dates. I'm saying no, it's not going to start on 10/1/2015. It's actually going to start on the 20th. And the finish is not going to happen on the 30th. It's actually going to happen on the 28th. So once I've done that, these activity details that I've linked, I'm basically saving the data, and I'm choosing to go ahead and submit and start this cost or purchase order process within Unifier linked to my activity. I will click send and initiate this PO. Go to my purchase order. There it is at the top of my log. I'm going to accept the task. It is now in the workflow process under review. And again, just a quick note of housekeeping, changing from the 1st to the 20th and from the 30th to the 28th for the dates, actual start, actual finish. I'm going to go ahead and approve this particular purchase order, saying that these are the dates when changes that are going to happen to this particular activity, and choose send. This process has now been applied. It is on the end step in terminal status in Unifier. And if I now go to my activity sheet within Lonsdale Place and my project, and I look at activity 06040, I see now the actual start moved to the 20th and the finish is to the 28th. Now, this activity sheet serves as a conduit between Unifier and P6. And now that I have updated a date that this particular activity dates is supposed to transpire or take place, I can communicate between Unifier and P6. There's an area here called send data. You can look at the history at what's happened. And I'm going to simply click send data and move this activity sheet data back to information back to P6 to update my P6 schedule. The request has been initiated. Again, this takes a few minutes as well. And you may check the history. It can take a few minutes. And while we wait, I'll jump back actually to the slides. And so what I have done, I have brought in information, if you can see my cursor and mouse, from P6 through Gateway into Unifier. Actually, I'll go back one more step. I've brought in cost, code, accounting code structure information into Unifier, brought that to P6, associated that with my P6 activities. I've then linked those P6 activities to my cost information, brought those back from P6 back into Unifier. Perhaps the CBS information also may have come from Oracle EBS, syncing that up, perhaps with a unique PO identifier, I have then updated my schedule information in Unifier into real time, what is happening, and I have pushed that back to P6. So now, through this process and unique identifiers and integration linkage, all three systems are talking in sync, in tandem. And I'll exit out of this, go back to my activity sheet in P6, the history. Let me refresh this, see what's going on here. So nothing's happened yet. Well, the basis and the point of what I'm saying is I'm going to go back to P6 and see, I'll refresh the activities. And here we are, the start and finish being October the 20th and the 28th of 06040. Having moved this data, let me go back and verify quickly. There we are. So updating the actual finish and actual start in Unifier and pushing that data back to reflect in the schedule in P6 here. So this is a very, very useful technique and tool and integration that you can use to have real-time sync or collaboration between your financial system, EBS, Unifier, your cost controls and project management system, and your P6, your scheduling and resource system, allowing all three, or if you just want P6 and Unifier to work together in tandem, it depends on how you want to apply this advantageous integration to assist your organization or company. That is very useful to be able to do and use. So now to continue on with my process, I'm going to go back to my slideshow and I'm going to skip over a slide that I'm going to come back to, and I'm going to show you where some of this and from which some of this information comes. There's an area in Gateway where these synchronizations are configured and set up. Several things that we've done so far. We've gotten activity data from P6 and brought that data from P6 into Unifier. We've sent activity data from Unifier to P6. The next thing I'm going to be doing at the bottom here deals with sending to Primavera Unifier the CBS data or P6 summary data. And what has previously happened was the last one you see on the list, the update from Primavera Unifier, which was bringing the CBS code from Unifier to P6, which I sent from the Unifier cost sheet into P6 so I could associate activity with the WBS or cost code, CBS system, CBS breakdown. These are configurations that are selected in the back end, behind the scenes, when you set up and configure Gateway. Oh, actually, I didn't mean to go out of that. So the next slide I'm going to be moving to, I'm going to show you going back to Unifier and P6 through the Gateway system. There is another integration that you can choose that configured called Send to Primavera Unifier. And in choosing this, you have the capability in P6 to choose to send your activity sheet or your summary sheet. I have done activity sheet here on the right, and now I'm going to be doing the summary sheet and spread data on the left through P6. This again is P6 activity data that I've shown you previously. And I'm going to now be showing you where this P6 summary data is going to be landing within the P6 summary sheet in Unifier, and continue to explain from there. So I'm going to go back to P6, choose my, actually I want to point something out so you can see the correlation between these two items. In my P6, I'm going to go to these particular activity codes. 06020, you see a value of 4,000 for the actual cost in the expenses in here in P6. I'm going to go to 06070, you see a value of 200 in the actual cost. Please note that the CBS codes, and actually one more activity, 03, where is that one? Here we are. 03010, that actual cost is 200. But if you note that the CBS for all of those activities, the 03010, the 06020, and the 06070, all of the CBSs are the same. I've classified all those under 1616700 S.1.1. Communications. I'm calling these a communications, I guess you could say WBS description or element. I'm saying the notice to proceed for design was a communications node. And I'm also saying that the 020, the bid advertisement was a communications item, and the BOCC award being awarded was a communications item. But all the total cost of those three activities linked to the CBS as well adds up to $4,400. I have chosen to now, in my exchange data, send to Primavera Unifier. And I am sending to my summary sheet, summary spread, and spread the data, which I'm going to be then segueing into in terms of your cash flow and cost curve. Simply choose to send and push this information. Again, I am looking to get the advantage of my summarized information, which is now aggregating these various activities and their costs across the cost code or CBS, WBS that I have linked them to that has come over from Unifier. I've linked them all in P6 and now I'm sending them back to Unifier. Of course, the service status is running. We don't have to sit and wait for that. I'm now going to go to my P6 summary sheet. And if I open my P6 summary sheet, and we look at the communications cost code that I talked about and scroll over to the right, you can see the total value of that is $4,400. So it's taken those 3 activities and aggregated the costs and rolled those all up into my cost code within my P6 summary sheet. You could then, if you wanted to, theoretically, push from Unifier, which has now costed these items that have come from P6, and push those back to EBS for your real-time financial reporting to get an understanding and a real-world view of how much these activities are actually costing you in your project or program. This is huge. This is very important to be able to get real-time visual into these type of items. So this is a very important feature to be able to use within your system. Now, what has happened from this P6 summary sheet? The P6 summary sheet in Unifier will perform a spread over time based upon your scheduled dates and value, and spread your costs to allow you to see what your, I guess you could say in a sense, your cash flow may be costing you over a particular amount of time. This P6 summary sheet automatically does the curve for you. I'm going to now move from this summary sheet and go over to financial reporting and look at something called my cash flow curve. Project cash flow. I'm saying I'm pulling this from my P6 data source, which in essentially, it's not the most beautiful cash flow curve, I would say, but I've brought in my actuals of what it's actually cost from P6, and you're seeing this real-time representation in my P6 in this curve based upon the actuals and the costs that have come from P6. You can do a small manipulation if you choose to, and look at the curve based upon some expanded dates or whatnot. Again, you have numerous options to be able to look at your project cash flow. You can look at your cash flow from your P6 schedule and those costs. You also have the option in Unifier to look at your cash flow curve based upon using the P6 summary sheet spread, or you can also use the native Unifier BP capabilities and be pulling the cash flow from your cost sheet column, which I'm getting ready to move over and show you next. Simply close this cash flow, and I'm going to go to an area that's fairly popular in Unifier called the project cost sheet. Within this project cost sheet, as I brought in costs from P6 into Unifier, since they were from the schedule and they were not necessarily going from into business processes, I decided to add an additional column to my cost sheet, which is called P6 actual cost. And if I click on this particular column, I am pulling from the data source the current schedule and the actual cost. So as more items were to come in from the schedule, what they would cost, those could be represented. And you also have the option of using, for your cash flow curve, columns in your cost sheet. So I could have my P6 actual cost as a curve being shown in my graph. I could have my initial budget. I could have a baseline budget. I could have a forecasted cost. And you could compare those particular curves against other business processes within the Unifier system to see a comparison of this is how much P6 is telling me it's costing me over a certain point of time. This is what's actually happening maybe in the real world as project managers and managers are submitting purchase orders and contracts. What are my actual project costs costing me as I move through the project management life cycle within the system? Those are two very different, well, I'm saying hugely different, but important methodologies or approaches that you can use to your advantage as an organization in how you'd like to apply using P6, Gateway, and Unifier, and also EBS should you choose to link it. Now, one thing that I would like to show deals with another, I guess you could say, concept that is catching on pretty well in terms of the construction and EPC industry. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with using, I'll go back to my slide quickly, my slideshow quickly here, which had to do with the data warehouse concept. You are looking at the same slide, except it simply has a conceptual data warehouse built in. And what do I mean by that? Data storage for analytics. If a company or an individual, say a gentleman I know by the name of Mr. Brian Chris, wanted to use all of his information, but aggregate it and store it all in one place so he could sit it in a data warehouse so he could put it on top of his analytics, Oracle Analytics, OBIE, should he choose, to be able to slice and dice his information in a way so he starts to know the things that he does not know. This is a perfect example or capability of this system because you are now syncing Oracle EBS, Unifier, and P6, these three systems, through a tool of Gateway. If you can aggregate that all into one place, you are able to then show that information through dashboards, reporting. Another important caveat, I would say, if you see this small text here, time phase data. Unifier, I guess you could say in a sense, is a transactional database. It moves, it updates data in real time as things change and they go. One thing you may want to consider is moving your data in snapshots. So you can have time phase snapshots, cash flow curve snapshots. This was the cash flow 2 months ago. This is the cash flow now. You can look at the delta between your curve and what's happening in your projects. Are your actuals increasing? Are they decreasing as the project moves through its stages? And in your time phase data, which could be stored and pushed through Unifier into your data warehouse to then be analyzed by Oracle. I'll simply just show a particular example of that and how this can be conceptualized and set up. In Unifier, there is an area, and I'll simply go here quickly to your data structure, ER views. You have areas in the back here where particular schedule or schedule information is stored in back-end data tables. And as the information is brought into those data tables, it's stored in Unifier and it updates and dynamically changes as data is brought in and business processes are started and completed. But you may want to have a storage and a vision into that, a view into that historically, and be able to see snapshots. So in an area here in Unifier, you may have something called, a data view, where you could potentially store your data, have particular pieces of metadata that you want saved, and store that, and have the output of that data, which you're looking at now. And you can segment it, and once you've dumped your data, you can obviously filter it, slice it and dice it by project and type and WBS code or CBS code, and have the snapshot of this changing data that you're looking at pushed into your data warehouse and stored on an ongoing basis to perform your analytics over time. And maybe you may be merging this with external systems or external software, or doing some sort of calculations against it. Maybe you have some financial reporting you need to do to an environmental or EPC agency. However you see the benefit need. But this is one of the important benefits of using a data warehouse and the capabilities that you have in doing this. And so you can have that data pushed out and stored. It's almost like you're creating a data library within your organization. You can look forward and back over time. So this is very, very important. And I think I've basically come to an end. I'm going to now do a small recap to make sure I haven't missed anything. I've talked about the P6 dates linked to Unifier in the schedule sheet in terms of moving the dates from P6 to the Unifier schedule sheet and seeing those particular dates in the schedule sheet and updating of that, the possible notation you can get, P6 activities related to CBS, WBS, how that functions, how you're able to link and show the activity. I don't have the mention here where you could link that back and have that sent back to EBS should you choose. The summary sheet, summarize costs in Unifier from P6 and getting your cash flow. And of course, I talked about the cost sheet and summary sheet options for your cash flow, how you'd like to do that, which option should you choose, what's your best approach. We'd be happy to work with you on that. And we also have time phasing your project data. I just went through the data warehouse concept of that. And now, I think, yes, that's everything that I can think of. I'd like to encourage you, before we move into our questions and comments, to take a screenshot of this, or you'll get the slide deck. If any of you on this call would please think about this assignment. This would not be too hard to do over the holiday while you have some downtime. You think of a cost, right? What is happening in your project or organization? Are you having issues, costs, data? I don't know what I don't know. This data never is in sync. That's what's happening. And what problem is this causing? It's causing me rework. I'm always, the reports are never right. I'm getting fined because we're not able to show where this money is going, et cetera, et cetera. What is the problem, the huge pain point? And what type of solution would you like to see? What would benefit your organization or company and allow you to fix it? What do I need to be able to do to see? Could I create this report with my data? J.R. McNally, if you send some of this information, these things into me with a cause, a problem, and a desired solution, 3-paragraph blurbs, we'll follow up with some of the solution needs. We plan to do this in our next installment of webinar series, and obviously work with you individually behind any of the scenes and our goings back and forth to address a desired solution that you'd like to have for your company or organization. And having said that, without further ado, Dan, I'd like to open it up for questions and comments. If you
Absolutely, Kevin. I know we've come to the top of the hour, and a lot of people, we only scheduled this for an hour, and we did have about 5 questions that were submitted throughout the course of the webinar. Because we are at the top of the hour, we're actually going to cut this off due to time constraints. But all questions that were submitted, we are going to answer those in our sheet, and we'll send that to everybody that has attended and registered as well too. Basically, we're at the end of it, and if you want to go to the next slide, Kevin.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go here.
So we got some upcoming events. If any of you are going to be at these events, either the Construction CPM Conference in January, the Western Winter Workshop in March, or the AATE Annual Meeting in June. If we're going to be at all three of these, and we're going to have booths. If you need to stop by, if you have questions, please feel free to stop by. We're going to end this by thanking everybody for attending today. Again, we're going to put together a follow-up email that's going to include a copy of the slides that Kevin went through, a link to the recording of this webinar to show the actual demonstrations within the software programs of Unifier and P6, and then the question sheet. We're going to formulate all the questions that have been submitted online, and I'm sure there may have been some that have come in offline through email, and put that together for you as well too. But again, thank you for taking the time out of your day and attending our monthly technical webinar series. Keep an eye out through our newsletter. We're going to have some upcoming webinars going into 2019 that is going to be enhanced to this Unifier P6 webinar series that we're proposing for 2019. Thank you for attending, and we'll see you at our next webinar.
Thank you, everyone.